Okay, so I'm here to explain why the water sign Pisces is such a very deep and important and powerful water sign. Just a powerful sign in the zodiac. And for the Western astrology viewers, there will be a lot of like Eastern astrology, sidereal Vedic astrology terminology thrown around so I can make my point. So this might lose you and you might just click off. But if you're interested in wanting to expand your knowledge on some things, then try to stick through and bear through this video. I think this might be a little lengthy, long video. So I'm gonna take my time. First, I'm gonna talk about the other two water signs, Cancer and Scorpio, to build my point as in why Pisces is such the deepest water sign, or just the deepest sign in general. So let's start with the fourth house in Cancer. Cancer, the fourth house represents the home life and stuff, and it represents the relationship with the mother. And a house is above. A house is on land. A house is above the surface, right? And the crab, which is the symbol for Cancer. Crabs don't usually live deep underwater. You can sort of mainly find them on the shores. You know, most crabs, or crabs that we consume and buy and eat, people don't really got to go dig real deep to go find a crab. So from that perspective, that is one of the reasons why Cancer isn't really the deepest water sign. It is probably the most shallowest water sign. And this is not bashing Cancer, because all the water signs are unique in their own way. But I'm just saying this to build my point as in why Pisces is the deepest water sign. So from that perspective, this is the reason why Cancer is the least of the deepest of the water signs. Because just from the perspective of a house is on the land. It's on the surface. We store things, you know, things that we store on, things that we store, you know, they're in our house for the most part. And crabs, they are on the shoreline and whatnot. So that is one of the main reasons. So then we'll move on to the second water sign, Scorpio, and the 8th house. What is the 8th house? The 8th house represents sex, death, occult knowledge, astrology, mysticism, our spouse's wealth, and it represents like life after marriage. The sign Scorpio is associated with this house, and Scorpio rules the sexual organs. And Scorpio, you know, when you think about the things that I just sort of mentioned in relation to the 8th house, things like sex and death naturally are a very big deal. And Scorpio can deal, you see, Mars rules Scorpio, and Mars represents weapons, knives, guns, things that you can use to hurt somebody. And Mars is naturally considered a malefic planet, which is typically a planet with like negative characteristics and negative traits to it. So things like sex and death, they can be very traumatic, which is why the 8th house is something known as, you know, a house that deals with transformation, which is why Scorpio can be associated with transformation. Negative sexual experiences, or maybe being raped and molested and stuff at a very young age, can have a tremendous effect on you as you get older. Violating someone sexually is a very big deal and can have a long-lasting effect, a long-lasting wound on somebody. Death, it hurts damn near everybody. You lose someone close to you, you lose your mother, whatever, it hurts. And losing someone, experiencing death, viewing death, near-death experiences, that can transform you. So those things that I just mentioned in relation to the 8th house and in relation to Scorpio, those are very those things are a lot more deeper than the things I just stated about Cancer. in the 4th house. And this builds me up to my main purpose of making this video. Pisces, the last sign and the last water sign, is in the 12th house. It's ruled by Jupiter. And the 12th house deals with isolation, spirituality. It can represent loss, imprisonment, if I probably didn't already say that already. And that's just about it. It represents foreign lands, foreign travel. And Pisces, as I stated, is the last sign of the water signs. I mean, it's the last sign of the zodiac. Its symbolism is fish. Fish, that can be a wide range of things, but a fish naturally goes deeper in water than a crab. And scorpions, they sort of like they like in deserts, on the land and stuff, but they can cause a lot of pain and whatnot. And that's what I was about to say. The 12th house can also sort of represent like the subconscious. It can represent the world that we cannot see. Because humans were very bound to our 5 senses, that we can sometimes not believe in the things that we can't see, the things that we can't see beyond our senses, such as spirituality. So, the 12th house can also sort of in a way represents the things that we cannot normally see. When someone gets locked up and then in prison, you normally can't really see them, of course, unless you make visitations and whatnot. And in modern, Western astrology, Neptune is associated with Pisces. And I don't really have the time or feel like explaining why Vedic astrology doesn't really use the outer planets, but I can use Neptune to sort of make my point too. One of the reasons that the 12th house and Neptune is associated with mysticism and magic and illusions and delusion is because, think about this. We know that from a Greek mythology standpoint that Neptune is sort of associated with like Poseidon and water naturally. But think about water for a second. Humans and man, we cannot fully explore the ocean depths because we just don't fully understand what is down there, because for one, the water pressure would kill us. So the water pressure would kill us, and it's just incredibly dark, and we might run out of oxygen. We do not know all the different types of exotic sea creatures that have formed and adapted in the deep depths of the ocean. And when you think about it, being in water, it's like being in a whole nother world, like being in its own existence. It's like a home away from home. It's like its own different portal and dimension. Why? Because water, the sea, the ocean, it defies gravity. You go in water and your weight is different. You go in water and you can float. You can float and move around and move in ways that you wouldn't normally be able to move if you was on surface. So people like to say that, Pisces, they are like dreamy and delusional and stuff. And in a sense, you're almost right. Pisces, like I said, the 12th house is sort of like our subconscious. Water itself is like its own world. It defies gravity because you move different and things float on the water. But you see, Pisces, with it being the last sign, it sort of experienced everything in relation to all the other signs that came before it. All the other signs, they sort of deal with things on Earth and on a surface level. And think of like Pisces as like preparing your soul before you die. That's how I view and look at Pisces. You're preparing. It's like a planet, and the 12th house is like a house that sort of deals with, like, finding God, getting in touch with your insides, get in touch with who you are on the inside before you go die and move on to a whole nother plane. So from that perspective, Pisces, in a sense, doesn't really care about the things above the water, above, outside of its subconscious, because it's already experienced that stuff. It's already dealt with that stuff. And it's like, you know what? I really don't care about these type of things. I don't really have too much interest in, you know, doing the day-to-day things. Because opposite of the 12th house is the 6th house, which is Virgo in the 6th house. And the 6th house, it deals with worrying about the everyday things. It deals with like worrying about bills and worrying about, you know, traffic and going to work every day and texting someone back. That's what the 6th house represents. It deals with diseases. It deals with all that stuff. And Pisces, being the opposite, it doesn't want to deal with all that hustle and bustle. It wants moksha. It wants to be separated from that. Moksha means liberation. All of the water houses are houses known as moksha houses in Vedic sidereal astrology, because these are things that sort of give us pleasure or liberate us from the day-to-day things that we experience in the everyday world. I'm not gonna lie, I sort of forgot why the 4th house is considered a moksha house, and how it liberates you. Well, actually, I can freestyle. When you're at home, you're in your own little safe haven. You don't got to deal with what's going on outside your home. You feel at peace at home. You're away from all the troubles and the chaoticness of the world when you're at home. In the 8th house, I guess you could say, from sex you can get lost in pleasure. You can sort of temporarily forget about the world. And then this 8th house also represents death. Death, you really don't have to worry about dealing with the problems of this world. You know, you'll be moving on to a whole nother plane and dimension. The 12th house in Vedic sidereal astrology, or maybe some other astrological texts, is associated and known as like a house of like bed pleasures. You know, so also sort of like sex. I don't really utilize and view the 12th house as a house of sex, but that is just a little bonus fact that it's also sort of viewed as that. But you know, the 12th house represents, like I said, it represents imprisonment and isolation, which is like areas that you find God, a place that you find yourself outside of yourself, if that makes sense. People, they go to jail, they get imprisoned, and they become real intellectual, they become real philosophical, they become real spiritual. Even though they're captive and held hostage in bondage in a prison, in jail, they still find this liberation. They still find this happiness and hope and peacefulness within themselves in a captivated situation. And it just deals with finding liberation and moksha in a different sense. Y'all understand what I'm trying to say. Y'all get the picture by now. So yes, with Pisces being the opposite of the 6th house, it doesn't want to deal with the everyday hustle and bustle of the world. And now I'm going to move on to some of the more intricate, confusing sidereal astrological terms. And this will probably wrap up the video. So in Vedic astrology, they use something known as nakshatras. Nakshatras are constellations. You see, we have 12 zodiac signs, as you know, and in Vedic astrology, there's 27 nakshatras, 27 constellations. Each zodiac sign is influenced and ruled by 2.5 of these 27 constellations. And it is through these constellations is how you define and differentiate the differences between someone who might have the same zodiac sign as you. For example, you could know someone who has the same sun sign, moon sign, Mars, Venus, whatever sign as you, but it's those nakshatras that will make the difference in determining why y'all are so different. And if you remove this nakshatra concept out of astrology, well then astrology can easily be looked down upon as like some laughing stock, as it's typically looked down upon for the most part in like Western America culture. You know, most most regular people, they sort of don't believe in astrology. But in India, it's a little bit more, it's more spiritual on the eastern side of the world. But anyway, I'm about to explain the three nakshatras that are associated with Pisces. The three different sides of Pisces. Eventually, I will make a series on YouTube explaining all 27 of the nakshatras. So for the Western audience, this is going to confuse you. For the people that have experience in sidereal astrology, you'll probably understand everything that I'm saying, but it's all going to make sense. So the first nakshatra, the first constellation that rules like some of the first few earlier degrees of Pisces, is known as Purva Bhadrapa. This constellation falls in between like the last few degrees of Aquarius and the few earlier degrees of Pisces. And each nakshatra, they have a deity that rules them. Each nakshatra, they have a mythology associated with them. So I'll get into that when I make my series. But what Purva Bhadrapa is about, this nakshatra is ruled by the deity known as Rudra. Rudra is this form of Shiva that is like just supposed to be like this fiery dragon, violent form of the deity known as Shiva in the Vedic Indian culture. And Shiva in general is all about destruction, because there are three main deities in the Vedic Indian culture. You have the deity known as Brahma, who is known as like the creator of everything. And then you have the deity known as Vishnu, who is like the preserver. He balances things out and sort of like, I don't know, just watch over things. He watches over the creation. And then you have Shiva. Shiva destroys things. So this first side of Pisces, these first few degrees of Pisces, which I don't know the exact degrees off the top of my head, you have to Google this stuff. The first few degrees is under the influence of Purva Bhadrapa, ruled by the deity known as Shiva in its Rudra form. And the planet that rules this constellation is Jupiter. Because you see, this Vedic sidereal astrology, it just really funnels information. Like, it's a lot of information like this in astrology. But in Vedic astrology, it sort of breaks it down and breaks it down and breaks it down and breaks it down, and you sort of pinpoint exactly who you are in this little tiny little speck. Just, it sort of reveals how much of a snowflake you are, how unique you are out of this vastness of knowledge in astrology. Anyway, I told you that this nakshatra, the deity that rules it, deals with destruction. So think of it like this. Picture our universe. Picture our universe with the stars and with the planets in it. And Jupiter, since it's the nakshatra lord, it's the planet that rules these particular degrees of Pisces. Jupiter is all about expansion and higher knowledge. What if Jupiter is like talking with this deity, Shiva, and it's like, hey, I want to enlighten mankind, or I want to enlighten these life forms, or I want to continue to create or expand the universe, and I don't know, teach them new things and expand their minds or whatever. I'm just making this up to prove my point. But Shiva be like, we can't create no more new stuff, Jupiter, unless we get rid of some stuff. We got too much stuff. Or these life forms, they need to be destroyed. We need to start fresh. And Jupiter is like, okay, fine. I'll sanction and allow you killing and destroying all these people. And Shiva does it. Shiva gets the green light, gets the thumbs up, and it kills out all of creation, kills out all of life. So this first side of Pisces is all about destruction. It's all about just destroying things. It shows you the deeper and darker side of life, and shows you sort of like the necessity of death and destruction. And this is one of the reasons why Jupiter is really sort of like, we see it as this great benefit planet, but there's really a dark side to Jupiter. Maybe even more darker side to Jupiter than it is Saturn, as we most commonly believe. Jupiter is sort of like, in a way, almost like how we view God. We view God as as his great benefic being, but God has a wrath to it. God, whatever you believe in, can be good, but there's also a wrath on the other side of that goodness. God flooded people and has done all types of other stuff, and that's a whole nother deep discussion. How God has a wrath to him, and it is just not all peaches and roses. The same thing is with Jupiter. So, short and simple in a nutshell, that is what the first earlier degrees of Pisces represent. That destruction, the deeper, darker side of life, the deeper, darker side of life and stuff. There's way more to it, but I'm just being real short and brief with it. Now, the second side of Pisces, the next later middle degrees of Pisces, is ruled by the constellation, the nakshatra known as Uttar Bhadrapa. Uttar Bhadrapa, the symbolism, this nakshatra, this constellation is ruled by it is ruled by Saturn. It's ruled by Saturn. And another thing, when it comes to some of these constellations, when it comes to some of these nakshatras, there's sort of debates or debatable about the specific deity that rules these constellations. But one of the more mainstream or commonly agreed deities that rules this nakshatra, Uttar Bhadrapa, the middle degrees of Pisces, is like this underwater sea serpent, which is supposed to be like Vishnu or something. I'm not really entirely sure. I just know it's this underwater sea serpent. And I'm going to explain to you right now the deepness and the in-depthness of what I just said, of why the deity is like some underwater sea serpent. Think about it. A snake is very occult-like. It has very maybe occult and spiritual and most of the time negative-like associations and meanings tied to it. But a snake is very it has spiritual and mystical. Alright, so I just had to break this video up into a second part, but by the time it be uploaded, hopefully I'll be able to add both of the parts into one. I was saying that the deepness and spiritual reason, behind this nakshatra's deity being associated with like some underwater sea serpent. And a snake is very like spiritual and has a cult-like meaning. A snake can be poisonous, but poison can also heal you. Because most medicine is sort of like poison in a sense. In low doses, it can heal you. But you take too much of that poison, you take too much of that medicine, and it will kill you. There's so many plants and herbs out there that can kill you in high doses or just in little doses at all. But that negativeness, that badness can heal you. Snakes have very bad vision. Snakes can damn near be blind. But when you're blind, your other senses, they improve and get sharper and better. So in a sense, snakes, they see the world differently because they can barely see it at all. They see it very intuitively. Snakes can live in like dark like places, or don't quote me on this, maybe even underground to some extent. So snakes, they don't view the world the way that we view it, and they view it in the shadows, in a sense. They just see the world very differently. And I told you it's at the bottom of the ocean. I told you about Neptune and water and how it's its own world. How we will never be able to fully explore and understand the depths of the ocean because it would kill us. So this nakshatra of Uttar Bhadrapa, the symbolism, the deity of it being an underwater sea serpent, shows you that this side of Pisces, this middle side of Pisces, has an understanding and knowledge to it that is not of this world. And it's just very deep. It understands the things and comprehends the things that most normal, regular people would not be able to conceive and think and fathom. This is a very deep nakshatra and deep side of Pisces, these few little middle degrees that it falls in when it goes into Uttara Bhadrapa. And the planet that rules this constellation of Uttara Bhadrapa is Saturn. Saturn, you know, is this older planet. It represents older things. It likes cycles. And I'm about to get into that. So Uttara Bhadrapa comes right after Purva Bhadrapa. Purva Bhadrapa was the destruction, but Uttara Bhadrapa is the void. It's the emptiness after that destruction. So think about this for a second. Think about how powerful and intelligent emptiness is. Think about how powerful and intelligent emptiness and zeroness and stillness and zeroness is. Think about it. Think about if you was a fly on a wall and you was just able to just observe all of the life, all of the civilizations that have taken place in creation. Think about if you was just able to witness the rise and fall of civilization. Let me just put into this better English, like more I don't know, language for y'all. Like Uttara Bhadrapa is like outer space. But think about how intelligent that space is. Outer space is like a container. And within that container, it's holding all of this life. It's holding all these planets, all these stars, all these organisms. Outer space has witnessed bunch of people die, bunch of civilizations die. It's seen UFOs, it's seen people rise, it's seen people fall, it's seen planets get destroyed. It's seen all types of things. It's seen countless cycles. It's very intelligent. Uttara Bhadrapa, you know, it sort of humbles you when you understand it. You know, it's like, it shows, it just humbles you. Like, you might think that you're a real smart person. You might think that you're a real intelligent person. If you figured out something and learned something very grand, something very big, but you really don't know nothing. Do you think you might have been the first life form in existence in this universe that was smart or have learned something and figured something out? We haven't really learned and figured nothing out. We are simply people and organisms that are rediscovering things that have already been created. There could have been countless life forms and civilizations before us, and countless life forms and civilizations that will come after us that were smart and brilliant and probably will rediscover and learn the things that we have already learned. This side of Pisces just shows us that everything is like a cycle, that we are not nothing new. We are important, but we are disposable. You might think that, you know, we're intelligent and that we're great and that we're not going nowhere, but even the dinosaurs disappeared. You know, it just shows us the power and the vastness of emptiness, and just this is sort of shows you why a tree is sort of like associated with wisdom. If you was a tree and you just sat in one place for many years, you witnessed and seen and absorbed a lot of information. You've seen a lot of things. You've seen petty crimes. You've seen and heard all types of things. You know, you might have seen a lot of pointless stuff, but you've seen a lot of things. That's sort of like how outer space is. It's seen and it witnessed everything because it holds everything. And since it holds everything, it knows everything. And it sees the same repeating cycles. It's like omnipresence. It's like how God is omnipresent and knows and sees everything. This side of Pisces, this nakshatra, sort of shows and brings clarity to why some spiritual people, some sages and monks and gurus, or you might have heard people say that, you know, God is everything and God is nothing at the same time. And this side of Pisces helps you understand that, you know, helps you understand the power of nothingness, of stillness, of space, and the power of zeroness, the value of zero. And I'm about to explain to you the value and the power of zero. Think about it. Think about the number one. Let's say that the number one is you in this metaphor, in this example and analogy that I'm giving you. We are the number one. But let's say that that zeroness is God. That zeroness is a higher power. That zeroness is just that nothingness, that highness. If I put 0 in front of 1, it becomes 10, it becomes 100, it becomes 1,000, it becomes 100,000, becomes 1,000,000. What I'm saying is our value, our vibration increases when we add spirituality and God and mysticism to ourselves. Our value increases. And on the other side, if you put that zeroness on the other side of 1, your value decreases. Or the way I like to view it is, in the grand scheme of things, we see how insignificant we are in the grander scheme of things. In the grander scheme of creation, we see how insignificant we are. And this is why I say, don't get too cocky, don't get too egoistic. You might be very talented, you might be very skilled at what you know and do, but you might not be the first life form to have figured out and done what you did. There could be other life forms out there better than you and intelligent than you. And eventually we're going to die, and eventually we're going to go. No matter how unique and special you are, we are very disposable, and we are not needed to make the world or the universe go round. It's like this self-sustaining fire. It doesn't need us. We're all just like characters in this little game and puppet show called and known as life. And when you understand Pisces from this perspective, you view and understand and look at the world differently. It sort of humbles you in a sense. So like I said, you put that zeroness in front of you, you add God and spirituality and divinity into you, consciousness into you, your value increases. But on the other side, you put it behind you, you add the higher power, you subtract the higher power from you, and your value decreases. You become 0.1. And on the other side, you know, you also just see how insignificant you are in the grander scheme of things. So there's power in nothingness. There's power in stillness. There's power and value in the number 0. And that is what we see in these middle degrees of Pisces, known as Uttar Bhadrapa, that underwater sea serpent, that deity that rules this nakshatra, because it's at the bottom of the ocean. It's at the bottom of the depth of the things that we can't know and fathom to understand. Saturn is considered to be a natural karaka of the 8th house. Karaka means significator. 8th house represents hidden underground, occult, taboo things that's hidden from the surface. So Saturn is like a natural, perfect natural significator of the things that are below the surface. Understanding the things that are below the surface. Saturn is an old, mature planet. So it's something that's been around for a long time, that represents longevity. When you're old, you're considered to be wise and intelligent because you've seen and know a lot of things. Space, existenceness, nothingness has been around for eternity. So it's intelligent alone. Nothingness is like intelligence. But y'all feel where I'm coming from. I know y'all do. So the last side of Pisces is the later degrees of Pisces. This nakshatra is known as Revati or Revati. R-E-V-A-T-I. This side, the nakshatra lord, the planet that rules this constellation, is Mercury. And the deity that rules is like some solar deity whose name I do not know. Whose name I forgot. It's some type of solar deity. But naturally, this side of Pisces deals with the life and creation after the destruction. So we experience destruction in Purva Bhadrapa. We experience the value of nothingness in Uttara Bhadrapa. And Revati is all about the life that comes out of that nothingness. So this side of Pisces is all about creativity. It's all about life. It's just a very fruitful, wealthy side of Pisces. It is the last nakshatra out of the 27 nakshatras. And this is also sort of like a very intelligent side of Pisces too, because it has the experience and the knowledge of all the other signs and nakshatras that came before it. So it's like the embodiment of everything. This is a side of Pisces that's capable of doing any and everything. It's able to manifest and create any and everything because it has the experience of everything that came prior to it. So this side of Pisces, like I just repeating myself, it's a very simple side of Pisces. It's all about creation, all about life and wealth and money and all that stuff. Why is Mercury the nutshell lord of this side of Pisces? Well, because you see, Mercury is known as Buddha in Vedic sidereal astrology. That's the moniker, that's the title that Mercury has. Jupiter is known as the Guru, and Mercury is known as Buddha. Buddha means enlightened one. Why would Mercury be known as the enlightened one? Well, this is my theory. Mercury represents the way that we solve problems, the way we communicate, the way that we just communicate, solve problems, because it originally rules the third house and the sixth house of problems and conflicts. And it represents just the type of intelligence that's like used on the everyday world, like how to file your taxes and 1 + 1 2 + 2, that type of intelligence. But the higher side of Mercury becomes enlightened. It's when you use that intelligence for like a higher purpose. That is my theory. So here, Mercury uses his intelligence for like a higher purpose. Mercury here, it sort of decides, it's Mercury's role and job, at least from this Nakshatra book that I read. Its role in this side of Pisces is that of Vishnu. Vishnu maintains and watches over and protects the creation that has been created from Brahma, which is one of the main three deities. Vishnu protects and preserves and watches over things that has been created. So Mercury here is supposed to decide what life forms get created and sort of organize and sets the rules and foundations for creation. Mercury almost behaves like an architect. Mercury is using its intellect in a higher, almost godlike form to run and control and categorize the creation of what's being created. It's sort of deep and I'm getting tongue-tied, but to keep this short and simple, this side of Pisces is all about creation, the stereotypical side that we know Pisces for. And I don't feel so I need to really get too deep and in depth on that. The real deepness and in-depthness came from Uttar Bhadrapa. So ultimately, that's just about all I have to say about Pisces. Why Pisces is such a deep sign. Why it's not like Cancer and Scorpio. Why is it so intelligent and not just, distant from the world. And why it is distant and not and sort of distant from this world. And just, the power of stillness, the power of nothingness is why I sort of just wanted to show and create this video. I believe I'll make a video like this explaining Aquarius too, because Aquarius is just about damn near as deep and powerful as Pisces, and it's a difficult sign that's sort of very misconstrued and not really properly understood. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Hopefully I'm able to get this video into one part. If not, it'll be uploaded in 2 parts on YouTube, because I don't know why my camera had just stopped recording in the middle of the first part. But thanks for watching.